3 months later, Germany invaded Poland. Britain's declaration of war was heard over shortwave radio in London homes just after 5 o'clock Sunday morning. Ministers across the city announced the news at that morning's worship.
God has never promised us that we should be without tribulation, but He does promise us victory over tribulation. There is no other way to peace. No matter how horrible may be the pathway we shall go through, God reigns and will use the horror to His ultimate glory. Reverend Quinton Warner.
Ralph Yull, as a member of the militia, was immediately asked to volunteer into the service. He went overseas that November. For 6 years, he would be absent from his wife and a son who arrived 8 months after his departure.
He actually wrote, in the first few months he was over there, wrote and told me that he'd met a girl over there that he was seeing, and the obvious inference was he was seeing and sleeping with. But I just thought, hey, a young man who's away for a long time is going to be a lot more normal young man when he comes home if he is seeing somebody and sleeping with them.
London had to catch up fast. Most of the uniforms and equipment were left over from World War I. Early training exercises at the Western Fairgrounds included outdated trench digging. Even the 1st Hussars maintained their cavalry unit for a brief time before becoming an armored unit. They would eventually help liberate France while the city's Royal Canadian Regiment distinguished itself in Italy. By 1945, 30,000 men had been recruited from London's military District Number 1. But you didn't have to wear a uniform to fight the war. The volunteer troop show became a way of entertaining soldiers in training camps around London. Cast members boosted morale at night while holding down a job during the day.
Monday and Wednesday and Thursday, I was out leading 3 different troop shows and getting home at 2 o'clock in the morning because the officers loved the girls so well that we always had to go back to the officers' mess for a while. And then we'd get home, and on Saturday and Friday, when I would get up and go to teach at Toretta Beck Collegiate, I wasn't as enthusiastic about Latin as I had been on Monday. Anyway, that happened for the whole length of the war.
The Depression came to an end in a rush of employment. Anybody could be a war worker. Female students at Beale Technical School were taught how to operate drill presses and milling machines. London manufacturers quickly retooled for war materials. Spartan Electronic turned out submarine detectors that were so top secret most employees didn't know what they were working on. Financing the war effort became a patriotic necessity. Sandy Somerville, who served as a major overseas, encouraged London soldiers to send their pay back home to buy victory bonds. Hollywood actor Hume Cronin returned to his hometown to kickstart another bond campaign. During one grueling loan drive, Londoners were encouraged to gut their savings accounts. The city eventually raised $800,000, or $10 per citizen.
After a movie, you saw a newsreel, and it was usually of the Canadians doing something, and Ralph's mother and father, they had a habit of going, I think, Wednesday afternoons to the movies. And they were sitting in the movie theater, and the newsreel came on, and motorcyclists were riding. Ralph was training motorcyclists, and they came riding up over a hill towards the camera.
In a new kind of competition, there was riding for skill, where points were given for control.
And Ralph's dad stood up in the show, in the theater, and said, "That's my boy!" I've never forgotten that. And of course, everybody in the family went to see that film.
May 9th, 1945. Conventional sedateness, which so characterizes this Western Ontario city, quickly gave way to jubilant merrymaking Monday as residents, reassured by press reports of victory in Europe, exemplified their joy and thanksgiving in the largest unplanned celebration ever held here. Windsor Daily Star.
he came home, and I was really very, very happy to have him home. But I think that he felt that, hey, see, I did tell her that I was sleeping with somebody else. Maybe she'll feel kind of, and I can remember, we waited till my mother and sisters had gone to bed, because of course we were staying in that house, and he said, you know, if this is embarrassing for you, I could go and stay in the hotel tonight. And I said, no way! He'd just come home, I wanted him there.
1 month after Germany's surrender, Ambrose Small's Grand Opera House was sold to the London Little Theatre for $35,000. Famous players had turned down a higher bid from a bowling alley operator. The financial sacrifice paved the way for one of the most vibrant theatrical visions in the city's history, and it was all done with local talent.
London really was a theater town. Right back to the founding of London, there were theatricals going on. And there was a large bunch of London Little Theatre people who had been sort of waiting in the wings for this purchase of the theater, and as soon as it happened, it went sky high. In fact, for many, many years, the London Little Theatre was called the largest little theatre in the world.
Here is Mary Ashwell speaking from CFPL in London.
London today became the hub of a far-flung circle of amateur thespians as the nationwide Dominion Drama Festival opened tonight at the Grand Theatre, the home of the London Little Theatre, host to this year's festival.
You know, amateurs, there are lots of amateur golfers that are really just as good as the professionals, but they don't earn their living at it. And it's the same with amateur players. We don't earn our living at it, and yet we may be quite good.
In the years before television, the London Little Theatre flourished. No production was too ambitious, no play too controversial. 1 out of every 10 households in London had a subscription. It was the only way to guarantee seats for most plays. The group attracted such devotion from its volunteers that one actor once cut his honeymoon short so he could attend rehearsals.
Every production that the London Little Theatre was done as intelligently and as expertly as I can ever imagine. The sets, the costumes. Do you know that there was a wardrobe department there that had hundreds and hundreds of costumes in it? There was a scene shop like you would see in New York.
It was everything to me. When I think back to those times, it was my sanctuary, it was my refuge. I was so grateful to be able to walk in those doors. I always felt safe and protected there. I felt like I belonged there. Because I was an odd kid, you know, I just wasn't an ordinary kid. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't had the Grand, honestly.
From London, Ontario, CBC Dominion has brought you a program of immortal music created by the Don Wright Chorus. The program originating in the studios of CFPL Radio and produced by Lillian Wright.
Television can never take the place of radio. It can only add to radio entertainment. One of its drawbacks is that television requires the viewer's full attention. You cannot read or do housework and watch the television screen at the same time. J. Frank Geary, Philco Television Distributor.
In the early 50s, no one in Canada could have guessed that London, Ontario would be on the cutting edge of telecommunications in a matter of years. The first television signals had started drifting across the city from American stations in the late 1940s. Several businessmen had built the nation's first cable systems to attract subscribers and sell television sets. Despite their efforts, the new technology remained a curiosity for most Londoners. On the evening of November 28, 1953, it became an obsession.